session today, we plan to discuss the recent research conducted by LinkedIn and Dove to better understand the adverse social and economic impact of hair bias and discrimination on Black women in the workplace. So without further ado, let's dive in. So here at LinkedIn, we're committed to creating equal access to economic opportunity and creating more equitable outcomes for all professionals. That's why we partner with Dove on their ongoing commitment to help pass the Crown Act and end race-based hair discrimination nationwide. While progress has been made to end hair discrimination with the passage of the Crown Act in some states across the U.S., race-based hair discrimination remains a systemic problem in the workplace, from hiring practices to daily workplace interactions, disproportionately impacting Black women's employment opportunities and professional advancement. So Lauren, can you tell us a bit about you? What do you do at Dove, and what does this campaign mean to you?
Great, it's nice to meet you, and it's great to be here. So I'm Lauren, and I lead brand engagement and social impact, and so that includes helping to lead our purpose-driven communications in North America, with a specific focus too on our work supporting the Crown Act, with both of our brand campaigns to raise awareness, as well as our advocacy work to make sure that we can create a respectful and open world for natural hair, which is what Crown stands for. So it's great to be here.
Amazing. So we recently commissioned a study to reveal the adverse social and economic impact of hair bias and discrimination on Black women in the workplace. It's called the Crown 2023 Workplace Research Study. Can you share what findings surprised you the most?
Yeah, so I think one of the most surprising things was that we knew that hair discrimination happens and is really pervasive, but it actually impacts young professionals the most. And so one of the statistics from that is that nearly half of Black women under the age of 34 feel the pressure to wear their hair straight in a headshot. There's also some other statistics, like 25% of Black women feel that they've been denied a job interview because of their hair, and that number actually goes up to a third for those under 34. So I think we oftentimes have this idea that potentially the younger generations might not be experiencing some of the kind of biases or the discrimination that's happening, but it still is something, and kind of speaks to the fact that we need to be continuing this work to make sure that we set up a world that younger generations can feel comfortable and kind of freely celebrate and be themselves in.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that too, because I found that extremely surprising, because you think that there's been so much work that has already been done to try to like move this initiative forward, but young people still feel this way.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard.
Yeah, and we're making a ton of progress. I think that's something that I want to make clear, that we need to continue doing the work. But I think oftentimes when you think about the fact that young people are experiencing this, it kind of gives a little bit more momentum for us to make sure that we set up a world where that doesn't happen anymore.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about that, the effect of Black women's experience in the workplace. Can you share, like, just from like your knowledge and what you've heard, how does this really affect people?
Yeah. So I can also give a personal anecdote if that helps. So it wasn't until basically after college, that I started seeing my own kind of natural textures. I felt very pressured to be straightening my hair, because I think oftentimes beauty standards are very Eurocentric, and what we see as being acceptable both socially and professionally is straight hair. And I remember for my first job coming out of college, I had to make this decision of how to wear my headshot. And I didn't know, like, should I wear my hair straight? I worked in management consulting and knew that I needed to be in front of really senior clients and be taken seriously, and so how should I present myself? And it was a really strong battle, and I am really happy that fortunately I ended up going with my natural curly hair, and I could really feel like I was being myself in that moment. But the struggle was very real, and that is a pressure that we know Black women are facing. And hair is such an important piece of our identity, right? It is such a symbolic form of expression. It really represents our pride and our culture, and some of the hairstyles that are protected by the Crown Act, like locks and braids and twists. And I actually hadn't braided my hair for a very long time until this, so the fact that I kind of feel empowered now to wear it. But a lot of these styles are kind of rooted in history and our culture. And it's a shame that we continue to kind of feel this pressure to hide that and not really necessarily be able to bring our full selves to work. And that's why the work is so important.
Yeah, you said so many great things there. One, love your hair.
Thank you.
Two, when we think about hair in the workplace, it feels like your identity is kind of being removed, right? And to not have that autonomy over that, I think that's the thing for me that really gets to me. And it's one of those things that you have to continue to exercise in the workplace, which brings me to my next question. What advice would you give to a Black woman who's hesitant about wearing her natural hair or wearing a protective style for her hair?
Yeah, so at Dove, our mission is to make sure that beauty is universally accessible to all people, especially Black women and girls. And so we continue with our commitments to kind of reinforce that idea and making sure that we can dismantle some of those stereotypes and fears that make people feel that they can't come to work. So I always kind of advocate for people to even with those pressures existing, kind of take that leap and wear your hair that way, wear your hair natural, wear your hair in whatever styles you want, and kind of have that freedom to be yourself and show that full expression. And sometimes those conversations might happen, right? And I'm sure you've experienced this too, where people might ask questions and people might want to touch your hair, and those experiences will happen. But some of the advice that I give is just kind of having the conversation and while we're not required to educate, oftentimes it might be rooted in ignorance, and having that conversation of saying, hey, these braids took 8 hours. Like this was a very long process, and this is just an extension of me. And so if you feel like this is not professional, are you saying that I'm not professional and this has no bearing on how I can do the job that I'm supposed to be doing? And so I'd say the first piece is kind of having that confidence to be and come as your full self and have those conversations. I think the other thing is, especially if you're in a management or a leadership role, remembering the power and the impact that it has to be that representation. I think I probably wouldn't feel as empowered to come to work as my full self if I didn't see leaders doing the same.
Right.
And we have some leaders at our company that will wear braids, that will wear locks, and I think that has inspired me. And oftentimes you forget that how you present yourself actually kind of sends a message to other people and empowering them to do the same. So kind of just remembering the influence that you might have on younger generations or on earlier career people.
So many good things. I wish we had like an hour. But leading with intention, right? Like being able to be that example is really important. That's what I'm hearing you say.
And I think, and if you don't mind, so
No,
I think the campaign, the Black Hair is Professional campaign, what was so important about that too is that it really validated the experiences that many Black women have in the workplace, and kind of reinforcing and reaffirming this idea that Black hair is professional and that we define our professionalism. And oftentimes that it's something that we need to remind people of, but we all know that it's true. And so I think that's probably why the campaign resonated so much with people on the platform and professionals.
Yeah, I mean, feeling seen, right? I think it just had the momentum of the campaign. It was like, I feel seen. And I think that's already like a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes there's a lot of siloed conversations too about hair in the workplace and what does that look like. And you're like, let's just be out there, let's put it all out there, let's have a movement, and we can all kind of like have the impact that we know that we can have for ourselves.
And some people don't even realize that. I even had some colleagues of mine that don't have the lived experience of having natural hair, and were like, I had no idea that this was something that you had to think of, and I had no idea that,
unfortunately,
that going to an interview wasn't just preparing for the interview, but it's figuring out how you're going to wear your hair, which is something that not everybody has to experience. And hopefully in the future we can make it so that you don't have to worry about those perceptions.
Love that. Okay, so in support of the Crown Act, we provided free access to 10 LinkedIn Learning courses. Can you give us an overview of what folks can expect to learn within the courses?
Yeah, so we're really happy to have partnered with LinkedIn to make those accessible and to really create an equitable experience in the workplace for Black women. I think oftentimes the policies that are at companies and kind of the behaviors that people might exhibit that might be discriminatory are oftentimes rooted in really subjective and biased ideas of what professionalism looks like. And so the intent of courses like that are to help people kind of tear back that bias. And so there's a number of different topics spanning from diversity recruiting to confronting bias to inclusive leadership. But we feel like people need to kind of understand that those biases exist in order for us to dismantle them. So we're excited and have a goal of collectively educating 1 million hiring managers and working professionals by the end of 2023. So hope people can take those.
Such a lofty goal. I love that. So what is National Crown Day, and how can marketers on LinkedIn get more involved?
Yeah. So National Crown Day, which is July 3rd, celebrates and commemorates the inaugural signing of the first Crown Act legislation in 2019, which is in my home state in California. So we're really excited about kind of just celebrating the beauty and power of natural hair, and also remembering the importance of legislation like the Crown Act. So we urge everybody to celebrate on July 3rd, to wear their natural hair and to kind of to show the beauty of it. And we also want people to kind of continue having the conversations, right, about hair. And so we know that the Black Hair is Professional hashtag had a lot of conversations. So I encourage people to continue those conversations on the platform, and use the hashtag Pass the Crown, to raise awareness of the fact that hair discrimination still happens, and for us to try to stop it.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to you and your team and all the people who worked on this, because this is a serious conversation that we actually haven't had traction on before outside of the past couple of years. And so it gives hope, you know, that like we can continue to move forward in our workplaces and have the identity that we want for ourselves. And so kudos to you all for doing that, because that's not an easy task.
Thank you. And I also just want to say there's an entire kind of village that's doing this, right? So while this is really core to our brand mission of creating a beauty inclusivity, and also now coming together with LinkedIn to kind of have the conversations in the workplace, there are a lot, it's a movement, right? So a lot of people on the ground, from grassroots organizers to legislators that are doing the work. So also want to kind of pay respect to that piece, because while we're raising awareness of it and really advocating and championing for it, it's collective action helps us make a systemic impact. So
it takes a village.
It does. It does.
Well, fascinating insights there. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lauren. And thank you to the audience for joining us as well. Help us continue the conversation so we can end race-based hair discrimination and bias in the workplace together. Head to LinkedIn, share how you wear your hair, and don't forget to tag Black Hair is Professional. Visit dove.com/crown to take action and sign the petition. And of course, follow Dove on LinkedIn.